to today's video. Today is Sunday, August 3rd, 2025, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2026 governor elections and my prediction for not only 2026, but also now the 2025 governor races. I realize that I haven't been making this video talking about both sets of elections that are set to take place not only this November, but also next November, and I thought that it would be timely to go ahead and do that as we are 3 months out from this year's gubernatorial races, and of course a year and 3 months out from the ones that are actually up for discussion. The reason why I think that these governor races are often the most fun to make is because of the way that these races are characterized by state and local political parties in a way that a lot of the national elections really aren't run. We have Democrats and Republicans in many states that you really wouldn't expect. You have Governor Phil Scott in the state of Vermont, who wins by as large of margins as Democrats on the presidential level. He's a Republican in the state of Vermont. You have Laura Kelly in the state of Kansas, a Democrat who won 2 terms, 2018 and 2022. I mean, some very interesting elections really do evolve across the map here. And for the most part, a lot of these states really actually give both sides an opportunity to compete in races that might not even be touchable on the presidential level. And while there are a lot of states that still revert to party partisanship, they do vote in ways that they would on the presidential level, but sometimes to a smaller degree, it always makes for interesting conversation. So before this video gets into the 2026 races, I want to quickly go through the 2025 races, which should be pretty simple. Both of these states I consider to be likely for the Democratic Party. I think New Jersey will be a little bit more narrow than the state of Virginia, but either way, my prediction and my expectation, at least this close to the election, is that Abigail Spanberger wins the governorship against Winsome Sears in Virginia, goes on to be elected the first woman governor of the state. In New Jersey, I have an expectation that Mikey Sherrill will do the same, and that she will win against her Republican opponent, Jack Ciattarelli. I think New Jersey will be a little bit more of an interesting race, as I do think the trend lines there aren't that positive for Democrats, whereas in Virginia, they're a little bit more iffy, but, better for the Democratic Party. Either way, in both cases, I believe the Democratic Party will win the governorship in their respective November elections. Now, looking at 2026, we have a lot of states to talk about, and a lot of states that, again, we really don't discuss heavily on the presidential level, and that's the beauty of these races. That's the beauty of going through a lot of the 2026, election results, because a lot of these states are going to be ones that would receive no type of discussion in any other type of race, never a Senate race, never a presidential race. So let's go ahead and get into it. So California starts off, easy state for the Democrats there. Obviously, a lot of conversation around Kamala Harris, whether or not she was going to run for governor. We now know an answer. The last time I made a prediction for the governor's map, we did not have an answer. So we're in an exciting time. We know exactly what's going to happen. Kamala Harris decided she's not going to run for governor there. A very contested multi-way jungle primary is coming about in the state of California. Either way, Democrats are in a very solid position. Will easily win that state. The next state, I'd say, pretty solidly going to the Democratic Party, the state of Hawaii. That's an easy one. Colorado as well. The incumbent Senator Michael Bennet actually is running for governor in 2026. He's not up in the 2026 election year, so he'd leave his Senate office early, prompting a special election and a vacancy that he can then fill as governor. So it really is interesting. Either way, though, Colorado right now as a safe Democratic state as it was in 2022. J.B. Pritzker is running for another term in Illinois. We know that one is going to be safe for the Democrats. Maryland, my home state. Wes Moore might face a rematch, or not a rematch, but a potential re-emerging opponent. Larry Hogan, who ran for governor in 2014, won re-election in 2018, term limited in 2022, but per the Maryland state constitution, can run again in 2026. There's a chance he might. Seems to be toying with the idea, as of now, safe Democratic state. New York, we'll talk about. I'm not sure yet. I think this November election, the mayoral race, will be interesting to look at, but we can come back to it. New York's certainly on my radar there as a state that might be more solid and locked in for the Democratic Party as it was in 2022. And so this leaves us with all of the states that I would say at baseline are safe for the Democratic Party. And there arguably aren't that many. And again, that is the beauty of a lot of these maps, that opposition parties often do have the opportunity to actually get close to victory in many of these states. Now, taking a look at the safe Republican states, it's a lot of the same from the presidential map. States like Idaho and Wyoming and South Dakota and Nebraska all stand to be right now safe for the Republican Party. A lot of retiring incumbents, especially around the South, but across the board here, a lot of retirements in general. Either way, these 4 states locked in for the Republican Party. Oklahoma, same way. It was a bit more competitive in 2022. That one would actually be really surprising if you look at the map, but Hoffmeister, who was the Republican state superintendent, decided to switch political parties, run as a Democrat, came within 15 points of victory. Remember, this is a state that overwhelmingly votes for Donald Trump, who won by 34 points. So you can make inroads, and you have really strong candidates that in other states would absolutely blow it out of the water in a swing state. But when it comes down to where they are right now, Oklahoma stands to be a safe Republican state in 2026, even though the year might be a little bit better for Democrats. And interestingly enough, Oklahoma has had some interesting races in the past too. Stitt won by 12 in 2014. It was won by about 14.8. So again, Mary Fallin here. This race in Oklahoma has been just really, really surprising. The last time it was over, a safe margin in the governor's race was in 2010. So, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Oklahoma will narrow down. Let's not spend too much time talking about it. But the point is, as of now, safe for the GOP. Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama. There is some discussion around whether or not, Democrats are going to get a strong candidate in the state of Alabama. On the Democratic side, there are people that want Doug Jones to run. There's conversations around what might happen in this race. Either way, all together, Alabama is still a very Republican state. Democrats are still probably not going to make many inroads there, even with somebody like Doug Jones on the ballot in 2026. South Carolina, I'd say right now, pretty safe for the GOP. The last state I'd characterize, I don't know if you can guess which one that I would say is safe for the Republican Party, but I'd go so far as to say Vermont joins us as that safe state. And it seems really surprising. Vermont actually has elections every 2 years. In 2024, Phil Scott actually did better than Kamala Harris, the best performing candidate across the board in this state. In 2026, high expectation that, he decides to run again in 2026, but we'll see. When you're taking a look at, the 2024 race, it's hard to see how you beat numbers like that. So Vermont stands to be the next safe state for the GOP, but now we're down to about 18 races all across the country that are not decided by, simple partisanship. It really is interesting at baseline how competitive many of these races get. Now, a lot of it has to do with candidates. There are candidates across the country that could really shake up races that might otherwise be less interesting. States like Alaska, where you have a retiring incumbent, Mike Dunleavy, who had been elected in 2018, I believe. Let me go ahead and double check on that because I don't want to be wrong. Maybe it was 2014. I think that was Walker, though, because he decided that he was going to run for Senate. In 2018, Dunleavy, 7 points. Then in 2022, Dunleavy won by about 26 in a multi-way race. There's expectation that in Alaska, if Mary Peltola, the former Democratic congresswoman from the state, decides to run, that she could shake up that race. That's a big reason I don't even have it rated as safe for the GOP at this point. So let's go across the board. Let's not spend too much time talking about hypotheticals. Some states that we generally know which direction they're going to go in come down to be likely states. States decided between 5 to 15 points. We have a bunch of them, and we can start off the map here. New Mexico is one of them right now. Deb Haaland, who served in Biden's administration, is now running for governor of New Mexico. Chances are that she'll be in a good position to win there. It's a pretty reliably Democratic state. The last Republican to win it was George W. Bush in 2004. And since then, Republicans have been out of luck. Donald Trump, most recently in the last election, lost the state by about double digits in 2020 and 2024. No real shot here that Republicans pick it up. In Minnesota, heavy expectation that Governor Tim Walz decides to run for another term. It could happen. He can run. It's allowed in the Minnesota state constitution. And if he does, we'll be in a pretty solid stance of victory, especially in the 2026 election year. New York, Kathy Hochul, not the most popular Democrat and certainly vulnerable to a degree, but it is New York. It's going to be a state that, while maybe the circumstances might be better in other realities for Elise Stefanik, it isn't this one. And Kathy Hochul will more likely than not be reelected as governor of the state of New York. The next state to be characterized as likely for the Democrats is Oregon. Tina Kotek, who ran in a multi-way race in 2022. Very interesting candidate right then. Won, despite expectation Republicans might flip the governorship. This time around on a much easier pathway to re-election. Certainly going to be in a better position than she was 4 years ago. Democrats will probably be in a pretty reliable position when it comes down to winning there. Maine, another state that we can say likely for the Democratic Party. A lot of people running this race. This is one of the most contested Democratic primaries. If you're a Democratic operative in Maine, the whole idea here and vision for them is to get one of these candidates to drop from the governor's race and instead run for Senate against Susan Collins. Probably won't happen, but a very contested race. You have the son of Angus King, the senator, the daughter of Shelley Pingree, the congresswoman. This race is going to be really, really contested. Maine, likely for the Democrats. The last state I'd say is likely for the Democratic Party comes all the way out of the state of Pennsylvania, which might surprise some people. Not New Hampshire, not Arizona, not Michigan, but Pennsylvania. But it shouldn't. Governor Josh Shapiro, 1, is a very popular governor, and 2, is an electoral juggernaut. Not to mention that the slate of candidates on the Republican side, leave a lot of room to be, a lot of things to be desired on that end. I am not looking at this, and I think if you're a GOP operative in Pennsylvania, you're not thrilled by the bench that is emerging in the Pennsylvania governor's race. Josh Shapiro will probably win this state by about double digits yet again, especially in a year that's more favorable for Democrats like 2026. So that brings us to a close on the likely Democratic states. Let's talk about some likely Republican states. Now, I've already said Alaska, but I think that if Mary Peltola gets in this race, it certainly could be lean, if not tilt, for the GOP. That race would be certainly one to invest in and watch for the National Party. Florida's there. There's heavy expectation that in 2026, you're going to find Casey DeSantis, that she might run for governor in this state. So far, she has certainly expressed interest and would have a lot of visibility, and the last name ID is through the roof. Byron Donalds already, though, is running. He's U.S. Representative from Florida's 19th District. This will be a battle between Trump and DeSantis in the state because Trump has already endorsed Byron Donalds. But if Casey DeSantis gets into the race, it'll be a really close one. And so based off what we've seen thus far, the preliminary data suggests that Casey DeSantis actually would win the governorship over Byron Donalds. So we'll talk about that in another video. I've been meaning to make one about the Florida governor's race, but we'll see. Either way, with either of them at the top of the ticket, that race is going to be likely for the Republican Party. The next state that I characterize as likely is the state of Texas. I just don't really see that many people emerging as frontrunners on the Democratic side in the state, and I don't really see it as a position right now that, against Greg Abbott. I don't know if it's going to happen, right? There is high expectation that maybe James Tellerico decides to run or he decides to run for Senate. That is up in the air and wishy-washy right now. But if Greg Abbott is deciding to run, which he is, he will have this seat for a very long time, this governorship for a very long time. And so thinking about the 2026 race, likely for the GOP right now. The next state I'd characterize as likely might also come as a surprise. The next state is the state of New Hampshire. Now, this is a state that, likewise to Vermont, holds elections every 2 years. Kelly Ayotte defeated Joyce Craig by a margin of around 9 points across the state. Now, in 2026, again, expectation that this race is either likely or solid for the Republican Party. I'd err on the side of saying that it's likely for the GOP. But either way, Kelly Ayotte going to be in a position where I do believe she wins re-election, and it brings the Republicans to a total number of 14, with likely states included. That pretty much puts our, states in a wrap. Looking at the remaining toss-up 8 races, it feels very weird. Some of these states we're more familiar with: Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, but some of them come out of left field: Kansas, Iowa, Ohio. And a lot of it, again, has to do with candidates that are running for office in this state. For instance, in Kansas, retiring popular Democratic incumbent. On this side, you're finding that overall in this race, it's going to be interesting to see. But Democrats have had very good luck in Kansas in years past. In 2014, it was close. Sam Brownback won by 3.7%. Now in 2010, solid for the GOP. But then in 2018, Brownback, being so unpopular, elected Laura Kelly against Chris Kobach, the incumbent attorney general. Or not the incumbent attorney general, now the incumbent attorney general, by a margin of roughly 5 points. Looking at 2022, she decided to run for re-election and won. And looking at those on the Republican side who have said that they are going to, run in this election, it's certainly interesting, but there's no guarantee that this race is as Republican as it is on the presidential level. I think that this state starts out as a lean Republican state. Yes, the GOP will probably win it, but to the degree they win by, I actually wouldn't be confident that it'd be 15 points or more than 5 points at this state. Now, of the remaining races, again, a lot of these feel more familiar, especially if you're more familiar with my 2020 election coverage when Iowa and Ohio were, in fact, considered swing states. Not anymore, for obvious reason. But these two states in particular have some very stellar candidates on the Democratic side that could tighten it up. A lot of these states that, at default, Iowa and Ohio should be red states. It's on the Democratic Party to really narrow it up. Well, you have Sherrod Brown in Ohio, who very much seems like he's going to run for governor. You have Vivek Ramaswamy, who's an unpopular, never tried and tested, non-elected official appointee under Trump. That state so far will certainly be close. It'll be interesting to see who ekes by. In Iowa, Rob Sand, the only elected statewide Democrat, is running for governor in 2026. So both of these two races so far, I'd start off by saying lean for the GOP. But if Sherrod Brown makes a full-fledged announcement, we'll probably get some more data that could help inform my decision when he's up against Ramaswamy in the 2026 race. Iowa, interesting too. We'll see what happens. Either way, both of these two states, Republicans, I think, have a very narrow advantage. Now, Democrats, I think, hold the narrow advantage in the state of Wisconsin. They have a retiring incumbent, Tony Evers, who seemed like he was floating the idea that he might run. I didn't think he was going to run for another term, but certainly did seemingly consider it at least. Not going to run. Announced that. And so everyone's running for this race. It's going to be a very, very close one. Right now, though, I still think Democrats, regardless of this contested primary, ultimately pull through. And I don't think the Republicans would have that strong of a coalition, especially in 2026, in a state they only won by roughly a point in 2024. Now, the remaining races, I think Democrats are going to have a lot of struggling to do. Arizona, I think, is the best state right now for the Democrats of the four, and I want you to hear me out on this. Michigan is one that I think almost immediately catches everyone's eye as, why aren't Democrats doing better? But a lot of it has to do with who's running in Michigan. And I'm not just talking about the Democrats. I'm talking about Mike Duggan, who was a Democrat and represented the city of Detroit as its mayor, as its popular mayor. Instead of run as a Democrat in this primary that he knows he can't win, he's deciding that he's running as an independent. Now, his entrance into the race has completely changed the dynamic tremendously. A lot of Republicans and a lot of Democrats really like Mike Duggan. So he's pulling votes away primarily from, both parties. But either way, he's pulling votes away in a massive fashion. In some cases, he's pulling 10 points away from winning the outright election. Mike Duggan is in a good place. Against Jocelyn Benson, he's garnering 22% of the vote against John James, who, looking at this race too, right now we've seen that in this election, it's going to be a close one because Republicans have strong candidates, Democrats do too, and a strong independent candidate. This is a multi-way race, certainly worth watching. Arizona, on the other hand, has an incumbent who's popular enough, who can win in 2026, especially given the trajectory of this GOP primary, a co-endorsement from Donald Trump in the primary between Karen Taylor Robson and Andy Biggs. I guess you can't lose if you endorse everyone, but taking a look too at these numbers, Andy Biggs, so extreme, a lot like Kari Lake, seems like he can do well in a primary, will not do well in a general election. I say that, based off the numbers and the metrics, even the 24 election, even though Trump won it by 6, I still believe that in 2026, similar to 2022, you're going to find that this race, Katie Hobbs has it. Is it locked in? No, but it's a lot better than it was in 22, and I think Andy Biggs is far worse than Kari Lake, especially given the national environment. Moving back to Michigan, this is a state that I'd say is tilt for the Democratic Party. I think Jocelyn Benson can eke by, but on a head-to-head race, she'd probably win by 7 or 8 points. Maybe more, maybe less. I think she'd win. I would not say she has more than a 55% chance of winning in 2026. John James at 45%. I don't think Mike Duggan has a shot. I think if he can try to gun for a lieutenant governor's spot, maybe, right? But right now, Michigan, a multi-way race with the Democrat who's popular with Republicans, at the end of the day, it benefits Republicans more than it does Democrats, and Democrats might still barely get by, but this will be a race to watch. I am so fascinated by it. It's really interesting. Definitely a lot to unpack there. Nevada and Georgia, the last two states to really look at. I think Republicans have both of them right now. You have Joe Lombardo, who's running against Aaron Ford. It'll be a close race. Lombardo still has the upper hand. In Georgia right now, I'm not thoroughly convinced Georgia's going to go the way that Democrats would hope for, especially on the Senate level. There's going to be a lot of voters out there that vote Georgia Republican for governor, but Democrat for Senate. We'll see. The Attorney General's running. The Lieutenant Governor's running. A lot of people are running. On the Democratic side, I am interested to see who decides to run. Stacey Abrams seems like she's up in the air about it. Jeff Duncan, who was the former Republican lieutenant governor who spoke at the DNC, is considering running as a Democrat. Keisha Lance Bottoms, the former mayor of Atlanta, who was also in the Veep stakes back in 2020, already announced that she's running. Right now, we'll see. Lucy McBath says she's not running, but that could change. Depends on where she's at and how well her husband is doing health-wise. We will see, though. Georgia right now, Nevada right now, I'd say lean for the Republican Party. Spells out pretty bad news, though, for the Democrats if John Ossoff wants to run for president or be someone's VP. We'll see, but a lot riding on that governorship and far more than just the governor's mansion on the line there. So Georgia, Nevada, my final two states, Republicans at 19, Democrats at 17. Democrats win in the Rust Belt. They win Arizona. They lose Georgia and Nevada and a number of other swing states across the map that might be very interesting to track over the next year and a half. But overall, this is my prediction, August 3rd, 2025. A lot can change between now and November of 2026. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left, the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 governor election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.